In this video, we're going to be showing you how to make a tabletop that also has a inlay. So we're going to be engraving it with letters. And then on top of it, we're going to be putting epoxy resin that's colored inside of those letters and show you how we did it. It's really awesome and it can create a nice flat surface as well. So this is going to be part of a 3-part series. Where we're going to be going over how to make a whole homeschool table. This is definitely one of those 3 parts. So I hope you enjoy, and if you have any comments or questions on anything we used or anything like that, check it out in the comments below. And if we don't have it listed down there, go ahead and leave some comments, ask some questions. We're here for you. In the meantime, let's get to the build. Okay, so we have our board rough cut down to 6 feet and 7 inches, roughly. The final length on the board will be 6 feet and 6 inches once we get done cutting down each of the strips, which will be 1 1/2 inches wide. So in essence, they'll really be more like tall, but they could be considered wide. It depends on how you look at it. Doesn't matter. The point is you're going to cut it down into 1 1/2 inch thick strips. So that'll be for 2 of those, so that'll be for the front and back. The sides will be 23 1/2, so we'll just wind up cutting down a 3rd strip for that, and then just basically somewhat cutting it in half and trimming it up and all that stuff. So that's basically how that's going to go, so let's go ahead and get to cutting. All right, so we got this all glued up, and this is what it looks like. You can see that it came together pretty well, needless to say. Very few little patch spots or anything. So this is the stuff a lot of times us YouTubers, we don't always show you, is that these are not perfect glue ups, nor will yours, but you can get remarkably close. We haven't sanded this or anything, just is what it is, just using those bead locks. And like I said, this is some pretty stubborn wood, so it did not necessarily want to joint together the way that it was supposed to. So good times. So we're going to get this out of the clamps here in a little bit and get this rocking and rolling. This is the next day and everything, so just kind of going through the process, but I decided to show you how it looks. So we had a little accident with the circular saw when we were kind of chopping on the ends. I had to take off a little too much, so I had to kind of re-square it, and that took off a little too much. Anyway, long story made short, this table isn't exactly a 6'6" anymore. So to fix that, we're going to go and add a little bit into this project. These little guys here at the end. We are going to be using polyurethane glue because, well, quite frankly, it's pretty much the only type of glue that you can add onto end grain and put side grain on there and know it'll actually bond. So polyurethane glue is pretty simple to really work with. The main thing is you want to have a little bit of moisture on the wood that you're going to be gluing to it. It actually reacts to that. And then, of course, if you're going to be gluing it like I am, we're going to be gluing it above the surface. Make sure that you do have some tape or something underneath it, just to make sure we don't get any flow through. So it's kind of like dealing with epoxy as an example. So you just want to make sure it doesn't bleed underneath and attach itself to something that you don't want it to attach. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and get this glued up here. This is just really a matter of just picking the side you like the most. I think I'm going to go with this side. So let's go ahead and do a little of this. And again, this is just primarily to kind of get it rocking and rolling. And then the glue kind of does the rest after that. Just likes that little bit of moisture there. All right, it's that time. We're ready to go and do the round over on this thing. So got our round over bit all locked in and ready to go. Got it about as far as I can possibly take it for the round over. So we'll have a nice smooth edge all the way down here. We're going to round over the sides on here, and then on the hutch we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to round over just on that one we're just going to round over just the front, and the sides we're not going to touch for various reasons, dowels being one of them. And that it doesn't honestly need it. So that's basically how we're going to do that. So let's get to the routing. All right, and that's how you edge route your table. It's nice. Do that. Definitely do that. Just saying. All right, move on to the next fun parts. Let's do this. Okay, so for this part, we're going to go ahead and route in the kids' names here on the actual desk. Now, the nice thing about what we're doing here is that we're going to route it in here with State Park, which if I can, I'll get you a link to it down in the description. It's a really neat template. This is the 3.5, 3.25, something like that. I'll put it on the screen, correct myself. But yeah, it's a really nice font. We're going to go ahead and route these in, and then once we're done routing them, we're going to go ahead and put some epoxy, colored epoxy in here to go and fill these in after we get done going and putting the seal coat on the table. So we're actually going to put this in first, sand the entire table down, seal coat it with de-wax shellac, come back through, and then we're going to epoxy, sand that down so it's flat, so that way we don't have like bumps and everything for when we put the laptops on here. And then that'll be nice and flat, and you're pretty much good to go. So it should actually be pretty neat. Something that we definitely don't see in tables very often. Quite frankly, because the reason it's really hard to do and it's kind of expensive to pull this off. Unless, of course, you just happen to have all the stuff like we do, which turns out actually doesn't require that much stuff. So if you're going to be doing this stuff regularly, and this is something you're looking to do for like a side gig or as your actual work, this is just another element of sign making. Just in this case, we're engraving it into a desk. Hey, it works. All right, so we're going to go and get to this, and then we'll get to all the other parts. So this ought to be fun. Let's do it. Okay, so what we've done here is we went with a really shallow cut, so this way we don't have to do a lot of refinishing work on this. And also save epoxy, quite frankly, because you're not going to see the depth of how deep this is in reality. So, and we want to make sure it's as easy to work with as possible. So in this case, we only used a 2/16 depth, which you can see gives a very nice little shadow, right, that we can go ahead and put the epoxy in. But what it does not give us is it doesn't give us a super deep pore area. So therefore, we can just use a regular tabletop epoxy because it's not going outside of those boundaries. So something to kind of keep in mind is you're doing one of these, you want to try to keep these shallow, and then with your color, then you'll fill it in. Unless you're doing it clear and you want a depth, then you may have to play around with epoxies a little bit, but for regular tabletop stuff, this will work just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of this finished up. I just wanted to kind of share that real quick here. Okay, so got the table all good to go. Now we've got it sanded down and everything. Get any little deviations taken out of there and all that. So we're going to go ahead and shellac this ahead of time, so that way we can kind of prep it for doing epoxy, which this will keep the epoxy from kind of just going out and doing what it does a little bit more than if you didn't do it. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and well, let's get to it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get the pour underway. And the main thing about this is just try to be as careful as possible. You do want to heavy fill it a little bit, but you don't want to like heavy fill it a lot. So let's see if we can get this right here. It's my first time doing this, so we'll see how I do. So obviously got a little bit better as I went along the process. Up here, obviously not as good. Down here, way better. So it's just really a matter of you know, how you're pouring. So yeah, be careful. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and blowtorch this here a little bit just to try to get out any remaining bubbles. All right. Well, the epoxy's been sitting here actually for a few days extra. We had other projects we had to tend to. But that's now all done. That's set and that's rock hard. I'll give you a show here. As you can see, that's all set up and good to go. So now what we're going to do is go ahead and sand this down to make it flush with the table. This will take a little bit, so if you're doing this isn't going to be a quick process, but it's a process. So take your time with it and get it right, so that way you have a beautiful setting. So that's what we're going to do. So let's get started. And as you folks can see on here that everything stayed level after we got done sanding, but that really comes down to just sanding down far enough that you get the epoxy off the wood, but we don't go down below the wood. So that's actually the really important part. And stays nice and level, no issues, no problems, everything's happy. So if you do it that way, you should be fine. And if you're going to be clearing like we're going to be clearing with lacquer, you don't really have to go too crazy like polishing this up like you would like a bar top that you're putting all epoxy on. If you're doing all epoxy, then okay, maybe you might want to put a little extra effort in. Probably not, because if you're doing all epoxy over this, this would just blend in and it would just work. But realistically, if you're doing a clear like lacquer, then this is just going to brighten right up and it'll be fine. So don't worry about that too much. Maybe take it up a little bit, like to 320 or something, just for this area, and then the rest of it, just 120 should be fine. So that's pretty much it. We're going to go ahead and do the other one, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the next part. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that. Definitely building out a tabletop like that definitely gives a really, really awesome amount of personalization. I'm sure you could agree. Hopefully it's something you try on your own. All these videos are about inspiration, and this is definitely an inspired project, there's no doubt. My kids are homeschooled, so this makes it a little bit easier for us. And it gives us one concentrated space so we can kind of watch over them because, kids, they like to do strange things sometimes, right? So anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Again, if you have any questions, comments, etc., please leave them down in the description below or down in the comment section below. We'll definitely answer those as quick as possible. In the meantime, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification icon for all of our newest woodworking and tool review videos. In the meantime, stay safe in the shop.